Hi all, let's look at another interesting game from the Sinquefield Cup played in St. Louis in the United States. So this is in round 1, Levon Aronian against Sergey Karjakin. E4 from Levon, and we go into the dreaded Berlin defense. So this can lead into the dreaded endgame scenario, which is played totally into. After d4, knight d6, we have the Berlin endgame, which apparently the arbiter had tweeted on Twitter, no Berlins are allowed. But anyway, we get this Berlin, a real crowd pleaser. Okay, can white prove any advantage here? h3, this has all been seen before so far. Bishop g5, a slight variance from the most trodden path, which seems to be bishop f4. For example, bishop e7, this position, about equal. So bishop g5, it's not exactly terrifying for black here. Bishop g5, bishop e6 was played. There's no harm playing bishop e7 either. This is no big deal, this kind of position, equal. So we have rook fd1, bishop e7, rook d2. So the big question, the real tension and drama here is if white can get any advantage. Check, b3. Okay, two purposes. Maybe a2 is sometimes a liability, but also b2 is made available to a bishop, which could come back to b2 and protect e5. h4, which does introduce possibilities of rook h5. Bishop does drop back now. a5. Knight e2. So knight f4 is an idea here to put pressure on e6. Bishop moves, threatening to double pawns. Knight goes back, avoiding that. So it seems a little bit passive at this very moment, where black's pieces seem to be the aggressors. Look at white's pieces here. Bishop e6, knight f4, but springing back now with a vengeance. Bishop drops back. Knight f3, and this one springs back too. Rook h6. Knight h2. We have now the rook dropping back. So it seems Sergey just wanted a first round draw. Maybe he had some tiredness on his flight to get there. Just wanted the draw, play very, very solidly in round 1. Wouldn't Levon just agree a draw pretty soon, basically? Knight g4. No, Levon seems to be playing on for an advantage here at the moment. So knight e3. Knight f5, knight c4 hitting a5. Now, intriguingly, it looks as though black should be totally solid, and one shouldn't be able to muck up too badly such a solid position, especially if one is Sergey Karjakin, a world title contender. But let's have a look at what happens here. g5. This is quite committal, actually. Pawns do not go backwards. But at this moment, it seems as though g5 is a really plausible move, tempting move to kick the knight. But pawns do not go backwards. Is this pawn chain a liability later? The e5 pawn might be able to support knight f6 later and weaken g5 and h4. So this is really quite interesting, g5. If black wanted to play super solidly, then perhaps just b6 protecting the pawn simply. This position might be very different. There might be a case here for playing g5 if g4 can be achieved. This should be even. But when g4 cannot be definitely achieved, as in this position, now there's a case, can these pawns be fixed and undermined later? We see knight d2. The knight's heading for quite a beautiful central square, which is a perk, definite perk of this position, that e4 square. Knight g7, knight e4, hitting g5. That's protected. But now, yeah, we see this is a problem for black. Knight f6 check. Now, it starts to be a little bit dangerous here. Black actually took this off. E takes. So black doesn't have the bishop pair. Is this pawn slightly vulnerable in the variations, or is it black's pawns that are vulnerable? Rook g8. Now if g4 is achieved, then maybe that's okay, but it's fixed. These pawns are fixed. Rook g6. That pawn is protected on f6. Bishop d7. Can white really prove these pawns are weak or not? Especially given that white has a weakness on f6. This would require some trickery or mastery. Knight c1. The knight is heading for a very important square now, but not immediately. Knight d3 to e5 seems tempting, but if this is immediately tried, then black might have knight d4 here, interrupting the bishop from f6. So that if knight e5, this gets very tactical. Rook takes, knight takes. Now if king takes, there's c3. However, let's imagine black has seen this stuff, and rook d6 now threatens knight f3 and rook takes d1. And so technically white can play rook takes d4 with an advantage here though to get out of trouble. This should be at least okay. But yeah, maybe, you know, white doesn't want to lose f6 in a hurry to this tactical sequence. And if we look again at this, by the way, here, yeah, if knight e5, then knight takes f3 check, as mentioned slightly. This position is actually might even be better for black slightly. So interestingly, importantly, to maintain f6, bishop e5, so not to be interrupted by the knight d4. So white is still on the campaign of trying to undermine these two pawns, proving maybe an Achilles heel in black's position. But even then, isn't it going to be opposite coloured bishops? Knight d3, sorry, is coming up now here. King d8, knight d3, king c8. Bishop drops back in this position. In this position, it's okay to do this. Yeah, because you know there's a bishop target here. So we have bishop e8, rook e1. So the knight still is kind of pinned to e8. The rook drops back, and now rook e4. This is very, very nice maneuvering now. King f2, knight f8, and now knight e5. We have knight h7 attacking f6, it seems, but white plays f4, kind of ignoring that, because tactically here, this isn't possible to play this because of knight takes f7 check, and then bishop takes f6 check, and then scooping up the pawns. So actually we have f4, just f4, undermining the pawns. And this is now getting really good after knight f3. The pawns are really being undermined with f6 held. This is a nightmare scenario that has been reached, where those pawns are potentially fatal liabilities here. G takes, rook takes, the h pawn is dropping. White will be a pawn up now. A milestone in the game, an achievement for this game. Is it enough because it's opposite coloured bishops? Well, let's see what happened. Rook takes, knight c6. The king goes here because the knight's protecting g2. g4, this g pawn, now knight g6, sort of teasing as if, are you sure this is winning for white, even if the knight's come off? But white did take that with a specific idea. Bishop e5, yes, bishop e5, very dangerous, because bishop takes c7 is now a threat with f7 to queen. We have b5 being played. It doesn't matter really about bishop d5 actually as well, because c4 and then the king could come across like this. So this is actually a really difficult position. We have b5 and bishop takes, knowing that on king takes there's f7 queening. So two pawns up. Opposite coloured bishops, does that matter now? Let's see. Black dissolves a couple of pawns there. 3 pawns down now. Things are starting to look fairly critical, but isn't black getting a pawn back here? No, this has been calculated well. h4 to get 2 connected passed pawns now, and be able to blockade just in time the h pawn. King f7, g5, 2 connected passed pawns protecting each other. h3, the king drops back for the moment as a temporary blockader, but that blockader is about to be swapped with the bishop when the bishop occupies that diagonal. But first, creating another outside passed pawn over here, stretching black to the limits. Now substituting the blockade of h2 with the bishop. Black is pretty helpless here as a spectator now, watching white just improve the position. This is pretty hopeless. And it's here, after king c5, that black resigns. The bishop's going to be won by this pushing pawn. The king's going to come back to f5 and g6. It's a trivial win here. So Levon Aronian proves there can be a weakness if black gets too adventurous on the king's side here. It seems the natural perks of white's position, the advanced pawn on e5 in this game, enabled white to kind of dislocate these pawns a little bit. They were fixed, they were undermined, the h pawn was won, and the opposite colour bishop ending was, it seemed in the end pretty straightforward. But this is the master Levon Aronian at work, a great artist of the chessboard. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.